Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey guys, welcome back to another week of the Men After God podcast. And I am stoked, just like I am every time we have a guest, for you to hear this guy's story. I've known Keith for a few years now, and it was wonderful meeting him and hearing his heart and how God was using him in life. And, he was going through it. And I can't wait for you to hear how God used struggle to help him grow in his journey to now be in a position to where he is thriving, his family is thriving. And I know you're going to relate to it, and you're going to be able to pick out some just amazing truths and some powerful nuggets that you can take with you to advance in your journey of achieving success with a thriving faith and family. Without further ado, Keith, man, it's so glad to have you. So good to have you on the podcast, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much. It's nice to be here. When did I met you? Like in 22 or 21,
man,
something like that.
It was COVID times, I think.
COVID.
And we were at a Saturday morning thing for In the Gospel, right? Pastor Kerry was having those over at his church, and we met up there. And I remember you were asking
Yes.
me, well, I don't know how much we'll share. This goes out public, but you were asking some questions about ministry, and I remember that. But yeah, man. Yeah, that was good. It's been a few years now.
Oh, man. So we met. I was in the thick of it, man.
Yeah, you were.
That was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about your family for a minute. Let's let the guys know what your family situation looks like.
Yeah, I have a great family. God has been better to me than I deserve. So I grew up in a pastor's home, Kevin and Charlotte Birdsong in Tillamook, Oregon. A little shout out to Tillamook. Maybe you guys have seen Tillamook cheese or ice cream.
Is that where it's from?
That's my hometown, man.
Oh.
I played football for the Tillamook Cheesemakers. Isn't that great?
What was the fight song? That's my question.
Oh, man, there's some really cheesy like the cheerleaders, man. I mean, they had their work cut out.
Yeah, you got to get them amped up. And I mean,
we'd score a touchdown, and somebody would run out in a cow outfit.
Oh no!
And the cheerleaders would like pretend to milk the cow as a celebration dance.
At that point, just adopt the cheeseheads from Wisconsin.
We had the cheeseheads. I bet
so, right? And I mean, your coach can't come out there and just by defense, there's so many holes. It's like Swiss cheese out here because everybody's cracking up, like, oh, he's punting. Oh,
it was hard to get behind, and we weren't that good, if you can only imagine, but we had fun. But I grew up in Tillamook, and my dad was a pastor. He started the church when I was 5. And so I grew up in ministry. And then God gave me an amazing wife, Sonia. She's a Texan. So we've been working through all kinds of communication issues because I'm from the Northwest. So we don't talk like these Texans do, but we've had a great time. So God has given us 4 kids, and they're all 2 years apart. So that's been the ride of my life.
Oh, I bet.
And,
man. Wow.
They're great. What are they right now? They're 3, 5, 7, and 9.
All under 10. And now, boys, girls, what's the gender makeup there?
The oldest 2 are boys. The youngest 2 are girls. And the girls are definitely our favorites. Yeah. That's for sure.
I got 2 boys and a girl. And so far, I think I would say the girl's a little easier. But I don't know, man. For me, the boys were great because you get onto them. It's great. You get onto the girl, she starts crying. You're like, I don't, babe, help. I had no idea what to do.
Yeah. I get the boys on, a man-to-man sort of level. The girls... They're just super sweet right now, but good. People tell me that like the time is coming where it's going to get more complicated.
Yeah, what's your oldest? How old's your oldest girl?
She's 5.
No. No. Mine is 6 going on 16. And I mean, maybe that's it.
Okay.
The 5 to 6 year old transition. I don't know, but hand on the hip. I'm like, what is that? No, stop that. This is ridiculous. Oh, that's awesome.
High levels of sass.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. And she gets it all from her mother. Definitely from her mother. And I can say that because this is a podcast for men. I don't think she's going to listen to it. So.
I won't tell if you won't.
Right. That's good. I don't think I wish I could say my wife was tuning in to hear the nuggets of wisdom that I bring to the table, but no, she's not.
Probably not.
So, man, you got your family, your 4 kids, your wife, man. Let's talk about that journey, bro. So I met you, like you said, you were in the thick of it. I mean, whatever you feel comfortable sharing and stuff, guys, I want you to listen to Keith's story, and it's going to be ministry heavy because that's God's call in his life. But maybe your calling is in business or in your job, and whatever it may be, you're going to find yourself in similar situations, because it doesn't matter if we're full-time pastors, if we're janitors, if we're carpet cleaners, if you own a business, if you work in corporate America. Emotionally and mentally, we face so many of the same things, and I know Keith was going through it, man. So Keith, go ahead and just talk to us about it. Talk to us about how you let's talk about just getting there. How'd you get into that spot?
Yeah, so the Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight. And that statement there, along with several others in the Bible about faith and the journey that we're on, I always believed them.
Yeah.
I believe the Bible cover to cover. I'm a pastor's kid. I go to Bible college, and I believed all of it. I just didn't know how deep it all was.
That's good.
And I think my journey is just so far just been an exploration of the depths of what faith is all about.
Yeah.
And Dustin, I guess I wasn't expecting it all. It was hard. I can't say it was bad at all. It was just hard. And, I grew up and, probably had rose-colored glasses on and had an idea of what life would be. The narrative of both the American dream, as well as just like the narrative that people would speak into my life. I was always just kind of like this sounds braggy. This is just a setup for the fact that I biffed it hard later.
That's one way to put it.
So,
right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I was always sort of treated as like the golden boy, and I was the kid in the youth group that was like most likely to follow God.
Yeah. It was because you could carry so many chairs at one time. Like that's a mark of spirituality and religiosity, right? Like you're closer to God if you carry 4 chairs under each arm, right?
I didn't get that until I was in college.
Oh, okay.
I worked we called it the Blue Crew.
Oh man,
down in West Coast.
Yeah.
And we wore blue uniforms, the Cisco, whatever. Yeah, it was a chair carrying contest constantly.
Is that what attracted Sonia, right? Your wife's name, Sonia?
Oh,
is that what attracted
it was the
Yeah,
biceps.
it was it. Yeah. Definitely.
No, you'll think this is funny. You know what attracted her? She'll tell you this today. Was we met at camp.
Okay.
And my grandpa owns a camp in Colorado. And that's where we met. And it was a cowboy themed camp. So I was wearing boots and a hat. And I know.
Is it Treasure Mountain?
Yeah.
That's your
Mountain
grandfather?
My grandpa. Yeah, he started that thing.
I did not know that. I went there once.
You did?
So we were in. Okay, guys, we're about to get sidebarred here.
Here we go.
We were in Southwest Arizona, and our youth group, we were looking for a camp out of the desert, right? And I came across Treasure Mountain. So we bought a bus. I got a CDL. Like this is all like within 6 months. Right.
Wow.
We got a bus that we got it for dirt cheap, found out the AC didn't work. It was no longer dirt cheap after we got it fixed. I got my CDL. We drove from Yuma, Arizona to Marble, Colorado, up to Treasure Mountain Bible Camp, and beautiful place. But it's definitely cowboy themed. And so she saw you and was like, hey, look, it's the Duke. That's it right there. Well, John Wayne action.
It was the appearance.
No?
It was. I would sing cowboy songs at the campfire, and that was it.
Her. Little Ed Sheeran action there. You're like the guy on the they're just playing and singing and serenading her with the cowboy music,
crooning in the hills of Colorado.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we are going to talk later about Treasure Mountain Bible Camp offhand. I did not know that was your grandfather, but
that's
That's how you guys met, and it was the cowboy appearance.
Yeah.
And then how'd it go from there?
As we think about faith, Dustin, so my first big step of faith was going there. So I graduated high school, and my grandpa said, come work for me for the summer before you go to college. I'm like, I want to play. It's my last summer, you know? And it was the first time that I really honestly sensed God wanted me to do something that I didn't want to do. all my life it had been, I'm game, whatever God wants. It was pretty simple. But I mean, I was in the house, and pretty much did whatever Dad wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And then it came down to my first big decision. And man, that's kind of terrifying, And I just knew, like, if I say no, I'm like Jonah. Like, I'm going the wrong direction. I knew it deep. Wow. And so I went, and literally, Dustin, the first day we drive up, I'm unloading grandma's car at the camp. And there's Sonia right there. And I'm like, you know what? This is probably going to be better than I expected.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So,
that's great.
After that, man, I went to West Coast and had a great college experience. We got married. She graduated before I did. So after her graduation, we got married. I still had like a year and a half of school left. And man, God was gracious. I've always had good intentions, but not great plans. So
I like that. I can relate to that one, man.
We got married. It was all enthusiasm. I sold my motorcycle and paid for the honeymoon. Yeah. And I remember landing back in LA and it hitting me super deep. Like, oh, I don't even have a job. And I don't have any money.
You grabbed that guitar, went on the street corner, living by faith.
I have played the guitar in the street corner. It didn't pay well.
Yeah, right. I can imagine.
And God gave me a job that day. Man, just like the phone rang, awesome. and I got a full-time job. And then, it's just been incredible. I haven't never intentionally put God in a spot where He had to pull me out, but man, I have often found myself in those places. Like in Psalm 40, that's one of my favorite chapters of the Bible, like the first 3 verses. And David's like, I waited patiently for the Lord. I cried out to Him, and I was in a horrible pit. Remember that? And it says that God pulled me out of that, and He set my feet on a rock. Then it says He established my goings. And honestly, so many times, Dustin, in my life, it's been like that where I didn't know what to do. I was in a bind. I was at a point where I had to basically, let's just be real. I have screamed to God, crying, just ugly crying to God, and just, God, you've got to help me. This isn't going to work. I'm going to die. My family's going to fall apart. I'm going to, whatever fears we have. And sometimes they're actual, and sometimes, we're being dramatic.
Yeah, right. But in the moment they feel so real. You get overwhelmed with things.
So real.
And we got guys out there listening that, they're overwhelmed with, maybe they took out some business debt. Maybe they have got financial issues that approach them, or they've put life savings into something. It's not working out. Or, we get so overwhelmed with things, and sometimes positions we've put ourselves in, right? You said that. And, and really, I think God uses those, and really, we have to choose to allow them to be used this way, to just go to Him.
Yeah.
And I love, you mentioned David. I just preached Psalm 131 recently, and in that he basically cries out to God and says, woe is me, remove me from these lying tongues and hypocrites. And then what I love in the next verse is like his prayer for them. It's not like, remove me from these evil people and bless them and their fathers and their kids and their grandkids. He's like, no. Could you please shoot fiery arrows of hot charcoal at them? That would just be wonderful. That
imprecatory prayer.
Yes, that was it. And he was interceding, but yes. So anyways, definitely getting there, crying out to God. It's sometimes the best place to be, though. And where you were, you said in the thick of it up there, you were pastoring up in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah. So we went to Washington for my first ministry. I was just like doing music there. They ordained me. I became a pastor. But in January of 2020, we set sail across the nation from Seattle to basically Boston. It's just I-90. So we didn't need directions. We just got on I-90 and drove east until we hit the water.
Oh, wow.
That was quite a journey, but we had no idea. Like, I don't know. I have just like this picture of us in this little, sailboat, no idea. We're just driving directly into a hurricane.
Yeah. Oh man.
So, January we move over there, and I started pastoring a church, and the church had been there for like the furthest record we could find was like 150 years.
Wow.
But that church had been around for a long, long time, and a great church. God had blessed it and sustained it for that long. And we got there, and as we were all predicting, like 2 months later, COVID whacks us.
Yeah. Well, we all saw it coming. So Yeah.
Yeah. Only the conspiracy theorists, and we all blew them off, and then,
yeah. Oh,
and then,
that'll go a whole different direction with our audience, man.
yeah. Guys, stay focused
stay
here. All right,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
That's good.
Stay with us. So, here I am, pastor's kid, grew up in ministry. Dustin, I was born, and the first Sunday of my life, I was in a tuxedo onesie in a car seat on the front seat of like the church.
Amen. Yeah.
Like that's how church kid I am.
Yeah. Wow.
And within 2 months of finally becoming a pastor, I'm canceling church for almost a year as far as in person.
Yeah.
And that messed me up. I was so confused. Like I didn't know what was going on. I was like, how is it that I get here and I'm making this kind of decision?
Right.
And I'll tell you, I mean, there were a lot of difficulties in that church, Dustin. I think I hope that we built lifelong friendships in that church. I hope that some of my friends from that church are going to listen to this, and so I don't have anything negative really to say about the people, or anything, but the experience altogether was very hard for us. And God had a lot of growing to, give me. I didn't say that well, but like that picture that the Bible gives of the potter and the clay.
He was molding you,
and he was molding me and shaping me, and I think he was giving me some experience that I needed. And probably the biggest lesson altogether, James says, the trying of your faith works patience. And I always thought of patience as, it's kind of benign, it's a nice thing if you got it. And man, when you think of men after God, patience is a valiant, courageous, and wildly difficult practice.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it's one of those things where I think the joke's always there. Like, hey, if you want patience, don't pray for it, because God will give you the opportunity to exercise the patience.
Yes.
And that's so true though. And as we exercise our patience, it becomes a little easier each time. It's just, we have to make sure in those moments we are yielding to the Spirit for that long suffering rather than responding in the flesh. And, and that's true with our families, man, with our kids. That's true in church. It's true in business and, business relationships. Just having some long suffering and some God-sized perspective can go a long way.
I love that word, long suffering. That I think, Dustin, that word, like when we generally think of patience, I think we just have like a small view of it. It's not an inaccurate view, but I think used to think of patience in the sense of like, I don't know, if the water faucet's dripping, I don't lose my temper, But when you throw the word long suffering in there, the word suffering, and the Bible says so much about suffering, and that is a big part of the faith journey, is endurance, long endurance through suffering. And that I really think is a bigger and better understanding of what patience really is. And it's being faithful even though you're going through maybe even a long period of suffering, of confusion and darkness. And that's probably a good summary of my story. And I think that God had to instill some of that. Maybe it's obvious for a lot of you guys, but sometimes we pastors' kids, like, we're sheltered a little bit, and I think that God had to give me some experience of hardship. And I'm only 31. I probably got a lot more in front of me.
But you got a lot. You're 31 years old with 40 years of life experience, right? Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, that's one way to put it. So, but I think that the experience has been fruitful, and I think that God put me through some of that. I always have to be careful. I don't want to blame God for everything.
Right.
Some of it might have just been me being dumb. But and suffering the consequences of that. But I would say, Dustin, throughout all of my life, God has given me these little blessings or big blessings that were pretty obviously from Him. And for example, like meeting my wife right after taking that big step of faith, and God blessing me with I could never overstate the value of the relationships that I've gained in the process of the difficult moments of my life. Great example is Dustin right in front of me,
Okay.
you know, and some of the individuals in the church there in Massachusetts. And then we moved on from there. Really, when God made it clear that it was time for me to move on, it was the hardest decision of my life. Because, I mean, you guys think about it. I moved a family of 6, 3,000 miles across country. We went there to stay. Like, that was the plan. Yeah. And we arrived, and I was developing long-term goals and plans and dreams, and I had invested my whole heart into that. And for that to last only a year and a half, and to realize I have to move on. Yeah. And I won't go into a ton of detail, but some of the reasons for that, ultimately, I just believed that God wanted me to move on. Yeah. There were some difficulties. I think if I could sum up the church relationship, 150-year-old church with a 30-year-old pastor. Yeah. And that was a bit of a mismatch. And I think that they were looking maybe for somebody a bit more seasoned, a bit more old. Mm-hmm. So I think I came in, we were just going a different speed and a different direction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's so important. I want to pause there for a minute because I know in ministry, I can speak to this. I went through Tom Rainer's certification course for church revitalization. Oh, and cool. That was a cool experience because one of the things that's in there, and guys, if you're in business, if you're a manager, if you're a boss, or if you're just an employee, one of the things it mentioned there was leadership mismatch. And how sometimes there's nothing wrong with the leader. There's nothing wrong with the church. They are just going a completely different direction, and they're not a good culture match. And I appreciate, I think a friend of mine, Robbie Green, which I got to get on this podcast, but my friend Robbie Green had talked about one time when it comes to hiring, he said, whatever your hiring process right now, double it, because you're looking for, can they accomplish what you want them to do? But even more so, are they a fit for your culture? Are they a fit for where you're at? And so, if you're a business owner, it's your responsibility, and as and pastors too, it's your responsibility to develop and maintain the culture that you want. But if you're working somewhere and the culture is just not a fit for you, then it is an opportunity to go to God and ask if there's another opportunity He can make available, because you could be facing these difficulties and trials, not because you're a bad employee or not because it's a bad company, but because it's a cultural mismatch. And that sounds like what you were experiencing there in Massachusetts.
It really was. I think I could say, I don't want to use God's name in vain and like pull His authority into my decision making too often, but I really do think that God put me there, even though ultimately it was a mismatch. Yeah. I could point to a lot of practical things, and I'll give one quick example. When I got there, they didn't have internet. They didn't have a computer in the office. Like it was, still 150 years ago, in many ways, And, that's great. Handwrite your sermons and just do it old fashioned. That's awesome. But, I'm a millennial, man. I can't even read my own handwriting,
right?
So, I got there and I started to update some of the things. God had given me a bit of experience with some of those things. And I had set up online giving, live stream, trying to bring us up to speed in those areas.
At least to the 19th century,
you could look at those as, you could look at those as only like, technical things. But I mean, they have gospel implications ultimately. Huge implications. Well, I didn't plan it, but the day we shut down for COVID was the day all of that launched.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
and you kind of think like it's like running off a cliff and jumping and then God catching you with a magic carpet,
Yeah. Well, that was, when I came here, a similar situation, not that bad or far back, if you will, as far as dated for the technology, but there was no live stream. There was no social media presence except for a private Facebook group. And the public page got launched while I was candidating, because in my interviews, I asked them, I said, hey, I was looking for you on social media. Am I missing something? You have a name different or something going on? They're like, oh, no, we just don't have a public page. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, if I come, we're going to, and so, and thankfully we've got that now, and God's been using it. But what you said it, like, those have gospel implications. Not only that, from the outside looking in, I don't think a lot of people think about this. On the environment, especially what you're in, they don't just have gospel implications. They can actually be met with pushback. And it can be met with reservation, and especially again, you said you're 31. Yeah, so you're 31, I'm 35, in our generation, like these things are just normal. However, there are churches that have operated, and some are still operating in that way. And businesses and corporations and things of that nature, they might have some outdated practices, and we think that we'll just update and this is going to be easy. But it's more than just like, hey, let's change the software to a more user-friendly option. We have to recognize as men after God that we are leaders, and sometimes in the most simple of things, we have to lead through those transitions, not just suggest them, and I think that's why so many people look at the overzealous college student that just got out of school and is like, hey, we should do this, we should do that, we should do that. I'm like, well, that's fantastic. Shut up. Why? Because they're not leading through it. They're just tossing ideas out there, but there's been no consideration for what are the implications, what is it, what's the plan, how is it going to work, who's going to work it, and all this stuff. And so I just wanted to bring that point out, because that I learned, like you, I'm sure, when you started talking about online giving and live streaming to a church that didn't have a computer, I can imagine the conversations, because I know what mine were when I started talking about some of those things. And I think it's important for everyone to understand, lead through change. Don't just suggest change.
Yeah. Guys, what he just said comes from experience.
Amen.
And those lessons are really hard. Maybe harder for some of us, but
well, again, guys, I've learned it the hard way, and I'm trying to help you here. And so,
yes. I would say, Dustin, one of the biggest things that I had to learn was ideas are cheap. Especially our generation, I should say. We've been told how awesome creativity is, and I love creativity. I would consider myself, a very creative type of person, which does not usually translate to awesome leader. I mean, I'm like storyboard, I'm drawing all over them. I'm illustrating. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I come up with ideas and plans and big vision. I'm a visionary type of guy. And there can be a disconnect between those ideas and the reality of the people we're pitching them to. And one of the biggest things I've learned, and this is not just church, this is just leadership, is relationships matter an awful lot.
Absolutely.
They matter an awful lot. And you can have the best ideas and nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, it's we've all heard it, but they don't care how much you know, so they know how much you care. And we've got to take care to like really believe that. I mean, down to the level where we practice it.
Yeah. I had I mentioned that quote in a message recently, and I added on to it. I'm trying to recall it right now. I'm going to see if I can, because I said what you just said, right? People don't know how much you care people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you don't care, they don't care what you know. And that's not it. I said something different, but it's ultimately, I was talking about people's opinions and us giving other people's opinions. And really, if they don't think we care about them, then they don't care what we think. That's it. If they don't think you care about them, they don't care what you think. That was it. And so no, that's so true. Developing the relationship. I mean, why is it our moms support us in everything we do? Because we have a very strong relationship there. I can tell her, hey, I'm going to build a rocket and go to Mars like Elon Musk or something. She's like, yeah, hey, go for it. I know you can, right? Why? Because there's a relationship there, and we have to develop those as well.
That's right.
So you're there in Mass, man, and you're learning through this, and you said it. God puts you there, and God puts us in places, I believe, where it's difficult because we got to grow through that. And then I know you had about a year or so or more reprieve and almost rest and refresh there at Emmanuel, and doing great things there at the school and the church, and then God's presented you with the opportunity you're at now. Talk a little bit about that journey of refreshment and rest, and then how God opened the door for where you're at.
Yeah. So right as we moved on, I got in touch with Pastor Kerry Schmidt, and he was, I mean, it's another state away. We were in Massachusetts, that's Connecticut, but practically it was only like an hour and a half away from where I was living. And he just said, hey, why don't you come over here and chill out for a second, and we really needed that. I mean, I was so down, Dustin. If you could sit in my car like the last 3 months before I moved, I was such a sad person.
Yeah, I can imagine
listening to sad songs and
you turn the ASPCA on commercials on just so you can relate to something. What arms of an angel or wings of an angel or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was on repeat all the time. I mean, I make light of it, because I don't want to make anybody cry today. That was hardship. I mean, like really hard, and I was embarrassed. Just to talk about like how I felt. I was embarrassed. I was confused. Why didn't this work?
Yeah.
Our idea of success sometimes is different than God's.
Oh, that's good.
And
right
I thought
there.
that I was supposed to go there and like triple the attendance and become successful in those terms, which is funny because like you read the stories of people in the Bible and sometimes it works that way, but a lot of times it works very differently. But I thought I was the exception apparently
we
to
all
that.
do.
Yeah. But, Pastor Kerry, he said, hey, why don't you come over here? Don't do anything stupid, because I was like, I'm moving to Nashville. I'm going to be a musician. That'll help.
There you go, Keith.
Yeah, I'll bust tables at Olive Garden and try to be so I just didn't know what to do with myself.
What was it like for your family at that time? If you could speak for them for just a minute, like your kids and your wife, like while you're going through those difficulties and even having to make this transition into a place of respite for you, and what was it like for your family during that?
Oh, I mean, it was obviously really hard. The kids really young, so 3 out of 4 were pretty much unaffected. Like they're just like, yeah, whatever. The oldest was starting to catch on. He's like, hey, I just built friendships here, Dad. And he cried when we told him we had to move on, and didn't really understand. And one thing a pastor told me once, though, he said, for the most part, kids, their anchor is in the parents. And so pay attention to that, because I was really worried, rightly so. I don't want to hurt my family. And the idea, like, they're gonna, it'll hurt a little bit when you move around or whatever, but their anchor's in you. So that's a big dad lesson that I had to learn was don't spill all of your pain onto your kids or onto your wife during all of that. There were times where I think I offended that, especially toward my wife. Like I'm an open kind of person. I talk about everything. And there's a time, I don't mean to just like hold everything in, but guys, sometimes we have to do that a little bit. Protect your family from all of your problems, find other men to confide in and get wisdom from other people. But
to that, Keith, I would say before, because I want to hear what your pastor friend said, but I want to say for that, be open with your wife that something's going on and it's not her.
Yes.
Right. That's really important, because a lot of times they'll take it on themselves. What am I doing wrong? What's up with me? Am I not this, that, or the other? Or do I need to do more? Am I, and so if you're not able to at least share specifics, I recommend at least, hey, listen, I am going through something and I will talk to you about it. Right now, I'm going to be talking to a friend or this, that, or the other. It's not because I don't trust you. It's because I would need to process this myself, and then I'll talk to you. It has nothing to do with you. You are a wonderful wife. I love you and I'm thankful for you. I trust you and I know I can confide in you. But I need to process this one first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wisdom. And the analogy that my pastor friend gave one time was, you wouldn't go like walk into your house with a gun and just start shooting up your family, but you kind of do injure them sometimes. If it's like you're saying, Dustin, it's not that you don't live a double life, don't be secretive, but you can be honest without over verbally processing to the point where you're hurting people. You're not, the goal isn't to make your wife feel all that you feel, even if you tell her, hey, this is going on and I'm hurting, but how is she going to help you if she's all shot up too?
That's good.
And so I think that was, so the kids were pretty fine through it, and I had to learn to be strong for them. My faith, there were times where I was investing in my walk with God primarily I wasn't thinking about myself. I couldn't think about myself too much. I was doing it primarily because I knew my kids needed me to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
They needed dad to be in
That's
the Bible. Good. They needed dad to be in prayer. They needed dad to tell them a Bible story before bed. And I mean, there were times I'd tell them the story of Abraham walking by faith, and I'd close the door, say goodnight, and walk away and just shake my head like, man, this is fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So yeah, those are some lessons. But we went to Connecticut and began a process of healing. And we got some awesome friends out of the deal and some great ministry opportunities, a master class in like the actual leadership of a church. I learned so much in that regard.
Oh yeah. I can imagine.
But I'll tell you, those car drives into work, I would just, I lived a little bit away from the church for a bit. I had like a 30-minute drive every day, and I would listen to the Bible. And then when my Bible reading was over, I would sit there and try to pray. And Dustin, for the first time in my life, I had no words. I had no words. And I was just sort of trying to figure it all out, for almost a year. That was the case. Wow. So I would show up in prayer, but I did not have words. And that was when I realized the ministry of the Holy Spirit. When we can't utter anything, he intercedes on our behalf. Yeah. And I know we're getting a little theological here, but this is a men after God thing.
We got to have some theology. I don't go too crazy with it though.
Guys, there are times, where in those hardships, so if like one lesson I'd just love to help you guys with, just show up. Show up. Get in your Bible. Show up to church. Be faithful. Don't make any crazy decisions. Yeah. And there's a lot of waiting involved in that process, and you just show up. Yeah. You don't have to perform. I couldn't perform. I was totally depleted. You know.
And a lot of times I think we get to that place and we feel like, well, I'm just checking boxes. Now, listen, we're obviously against, hey, I go to church because I got to. I got to read my Bible because I got to, right? We don't want to check those boxes. However, there are times like what you're talking about, because I've experienced some of what you're saying. Like, man, I'm out. I'm empty. I need to be refilled. Yeah. I need to be replenished. I need, but that's faithfulness, because you said it when it came to a lot of what you were doing. It wasn't really for yourself. You were showing up for your kids, and you were doing those things because you knew they needed a dad that did that. And guys, that's some of the weight we bear as men, as husbands, as fathers. Sometimes we bear that if we show up, not because it's what we need, but because it's what others need. And, Keith, you're pastoring now, you're pastoring then. And, I wish I could tell you I woke up every Sunday and was like, oh, yes, I get to go preach. And I can't wait. Like every day I jump, or every Sunday I jump out of bed, and those are my first, like, that's not what happens in my house in the morning. First off, I hate waking up. So that's just not a good time at all. But we show up, and we show up with a smile, and we show up with a friendly handshake, and we're praying with people, and we can be depleted and need to go home and take a nap, but we showed up, and it's not for ourselves. And that's some discipline. That's some selflessness. Because it's selfish to stand up and say, hey guys, I'm just not having a great day today, and so open your Bibles and I'll tell you something, but then we're going to go home because I'm not feeling well. Like, well, they didn't come there for you to feel well. They came there to hear the word of God preached. They came there to be refreshed because they need a connection to Jesus Christ. And you may be struggling finding your hope in him right now, but you can help them see the hope that's there, which ultimately for me has always helped me to see that hope again. And, but it's staying faithful. And then that's so big. Yeah. I love that you brought that up. Staying faithful to God through those difficulties. It, man. That's good. So
I love that.
You got from Connecticut, and now you're in God's country out there in Texas. How did you get called to be pastor there?
Yeah. So one of the biggest fruit of those silent times, you remember, I think Jeremiah and David both said in different times in the Bible, like where they like held their peace, they were silent, just for whatever reason, like they got discouraged and just like, you know what, I'm done. Yeah. I have nothing to say. And then I think David said, while I was musing, the fire burned. Yeah. And that was my experience of, I was confused and all that. But as I waited on the Lord, the fog sort of cleared a little bit, and he reminded me, hey, I called you to this. This is still the plan. And so my hope revived. And I started to be excited about ministry, excited about life, what God had called me to. And so I let my pastor know, hey, I think God wants me to go back into ministry and pastoral ministry. And so he's like, that's awesome, and we put some feelers out there, but it was just one of those like networking things. One thing led to another sort of thing. And I get a phone call from some church in Texas. So I'm down here now in Texas City, Texas, the least original name of all cities in the world.
Yeah, but how more Texan can you get than Texas City, Texas?
You don't get much more Texan than this. So we're on the coast down here, really far south.
Oh, wow.
And across the water from Galveston Island. We're in Galveston County. Okay. So what an interesting place, man. Cockroaches everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Oh,
yeah. I squished one on my desk before the podcast.
No. We had palmetto bugs in
palmetto.
That was in South Carolina. They called them palmetto bugs. They were basically flying cockroaches. I think all cockroaches fly, but they called them palmetto bugs down there. Don't know if there's a difference. If you're listening to the podcast, there's a difference. Send me an email and tell me what it is. But nasty, disgusting things.
Nasty stuff. Yeah. And its guts went all over me. And so
these are the stories of pastoring people don't realize, right? The suffering we do,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I got squished. I had to squish a bug today.
Man.
Yeah. So we answered the call to come down here, and it was another one of those moments. So I flew down here just to check it out, and see if maybe this was what the Lord wanted me to do. And I preached for the church, and I got here and it was brutally hot. I got a headache instantly. Like it's so hot, like you almost take it personally. Like, is this
God? Is this hell?
Like,
is this what you're doing to me right now?
Like the little missionary cards that missionaries pass out to like remind you to pray. Like I made a fake one and sent it to my friend. We're the Birdsong family, like missionaries to the sun.
And now, for those of you guys that are like me and have lived out in Arizona, because I know we hit 120 in the summertime, right? Up here in Connecticut, hot is like a solid 75, 80. Dude, we were here just this last year. They had a heat warning, and I think it got to 85. I'm like, heat warning. Okay. All right. That's 85. All right. Yeah. Careful. But yeah, man. So we had that. Well, dude, so you're down there, you're pastoring. Talk about the difference, and we need to close up because we went long, man. It's been great talking with you today. Let's go the difference you're seeing in your family relationships between where you were and the difficulties there and where, you're through the rest and where you are now. Like, what has it done for your family, for you to have made hard decisions to follow God in faith, right? And to ultimately grow through those difficulties. What's the difference in your family?
Dustin, I hope that one day I see more fruit from this in my children. I hope that the story I get to tell them will inspire them to have faith. And it's definitely the case now. But my hunch is that the fruit of that is going to be way in the future. Where I could say as a wise old man, I hope one day I'm a wise old man, grizzled.
You're on your way
with stories to tell.
Right? I think you've got a few war stories now. I know we didn't dive deep on some of it, but I'm sure you've got some stories already.
I do. And those are hard earned bits of wisdom, but they don't leave you quickly either. And so I hope that they equip me for the future. But some of the fruit that I'm seeing immediately, and I've been here 7 months now, is through that whole process, moving from Washington to Massachusetts, Connecticut, Texas. It is a constant reminder that your job might change. In my case, ministry can change. Your location can change. But wherever I go, there I am.
Yeah.
That's what a friend of mine used to say. But also wherever I go, at least currently, also there's my family. Yeah. My family is the one thing that has stayed constant through all of it. And it has had the fruit of galvanizing my family in ways that I just can stand back and smile at. Yeah. Like we have become so much more close my wife and I, it's been hard, like all of these experiences, you better believe they turn into marital conversations. And we're like, whoa.
Yeah, good, bad, and ugly too. Yeah, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think it was Paul David Tripp, in his series on parenting, actually. Great series on parenting, the book. But he said we all walk around with like a pocket full of sin, and it just takes like the hardness of life. You get bumped and it knocks that stuff out and it reveals a lot of stuff. Well, yeah, this process has revealed all kinds of nasty things in my character and things that we had to bring up. So honestly, I think it's accelerated my relationship with my wife as we've had to go ahead and talk about some of those things and deal with them and with their kids. So yeah, my family life right now, we're just absolutely thrilled. Everything's an adventure. We love each other. Wonderful. We're reading the Bible together. So I would tell you that's probably the biggest blessing that I've had lately.
Man, that is so good. And guys, Keith has been amazing. I want us to close this up because I don't ever like going too long here, but Keith, it's been great to hear your story, man, hear your journey, and you've been wonderful, easy to talk to, and I know our guys are going to be just blessed from listening to this. If I were to, just sum up what I've learned from you and just these moments, man, I think you early on when we were talking about faithfulness, and this is important. It's who or what you're being faithful to. Sometimes, guys, I think we get more faithful to our idea of what our life should be like than to what God says our life should be like. And that faithfulness is different and it's challenging. And it's definitely something that you can, grow into and grow through. However, you've got to know what you're being faithful to. Keith chose to be faithful to God, not faithful to a ministry or a job or a company or, anything of that nature. He chose to be faithful to God as he led. And through the difficulty and the faithfulness, God did what he always does, and he remained faithful to him. And it wasn't how he planned, but it's exactly what God intended the entire time. And so, Keith, again, I'm thankful for you. If you're watching on YouTube right now, my camera just went away. And so we'll have to get that figured out. But nonetheless, Keith, I'm so glad you are here with us, man. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And to our guests, not our guests, our subscribers, we have an episode we're going to be recording right now for you guys. Keith's going to be talking about a little side hustle he has and how he's used gifts God's given him to make some extra money and hopefully help you as you do that. And to all of our listeners, we're so thankful for you. We hope this is a blessing to you. And don't forget, you can follow us, facebook.com/Men After God podcast. Join our community, facebook.com/groups/Men After God. And if you'd like to become a founding member up until December of 2023, you can sign on to patreon.com/Men After God. $8.33 a month. You get a free piece of merch from our store. You get a 10% lifetime discount to anything Men After God produce, 4 free coaching calls with me, a free coaching call with our finance coach, our training and nutrition coach, and also our relationship coach. Shout outs on our website, on our podcast, and obviously our exclusive content that we produce just for our subscribers. And so we are hoping that you'll jump in there. $8.33 a month for 12 months. It's $99.96 a year. And you get all that value, hundreds of dollars worth of value there. And so hope you'll take advantage of it. Keith, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate you being on here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Guys, we will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/Men After God. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at Dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.